Live stream is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is August 15, 2020 for McLuhanMashup. We're honored to have Sarah Tarpey here, Duncan, Echelson, and Ignatov. Wow, what a party. This is fun for all at Finnegan's Wake. You know, Will Finnegan's Wake. So it's easy that we picked today, August 15th, because 101 years ago, James Joyce met T.S. Eliot and Wyndham Lewis. You know, Joyce made fun of Wyndham Lewis in the grasshopper and the ant sections of Finnegan's Wake, but it really is his maxim that we practice all the time, and it is, we live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. Isn't that cool? Because we're here live on YouTube, because Clint knows what button to push, and everybody has a laptop, and we can fake Finnegan's Wake and play with Zoom. So just to start off, what we do in McLuhan Mashups is we try to talk in non-academic, highbrow literature, words. We try to talk in common people words, like grassroots words. So we can get academic, but we want to appeal to the normal person on the street and convince them that they should too join Finnegan's Wake reading clubs. So the first question will go round robin is, oh no, I know what the first question is. We're going to ask Clinton, because he's a McLuhan expert. What does anti-environment mean? Because in a way, James Joyce may have created art by writing Finnegan's Wake, and McLuhan said that artists are anti-environmental. What the heck does that mean? Because most people would think he's against saving the whales and being nice to Mother Nature by saying anti-environmental. What does that mean, Clinton?
It's about a psychological. It's psychological. So one thing McLuhan would always say is the Balinese have no word for art. They would say that they do everything equally well, which means when the Balinese, according to McLuhan anyway, for his example purposes, when the Balinese make art, they're not making it to stick out. They're making it as part of their environment, part of their everyday world. It's part of their culture, right? It blends in. Whereas artists like Joyce are creating art which is meant to explicitly be anti-environmental. It's like when you look at that, it's different than the rest of your environment. It sticks out. And when you enter into it, now you can see the rest of your environment not as natural, but as something strange. It's like a way to leave your common perceptions and go into a different headspace where suddenly the normal is weird and the weird is normal.
Wow, that was good and brief. And I like it because this guy just died. He had what's his name there? Knock Waxman. He had a bookstore in New York that only sold books on food and wine. And they brought up the word coddle. And I think that's what most people do when they go to a book or they go to an art piece, music or film. They want that experience to coddle them. And so I looked up coddle, and it means a warm drink. So it's like Marshall saying we get in a warm bath every time we read a book. It doesn't matter what we read. It's that the environment it creates is comfortable. So going off what Clinton said, we'll start with you, Duncan. What is Finnegan's Wake?
It's an attempt to wake the Finnegans.
Nice. Sarah, what is Finnegan's Wake?
I guess it's similar to that. Your alarm clock, just with no snooze button.
With no snooze button. Now these are two questions that Eric McLuhan wrote in his book, which is funny because it was a dissertation in 1982 for the University of Dallas. That's where Duncan is from, Texas. And then it was published as a book, The Roll of Thunder at Finnegan's Wake in 1997. So the second question, we'll go to you, Clinton. I'm sorry. What is Finnegan's Wake?
Oh yeah, it seems like a waking dream. A waking dream. I should say it that way.
Yeah, it's language about language. That's my answer. So now we'll start with you, Sarah. What is Finnegan's Wake for?
It's for everyone.
That is good. Okay. Clinton, what is Finnegan's Wake for?
For reading out loud.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Duncan.
Clinton's been listening to Gerry. But it probably is for reading out loud. I'm going to refer to my first answer, which is Joyce is trying to wake the Finnegans. So it's for the Finnegans.
Right. But elaborate, what do you mean? Because people might not understand who you're distinguishing as Finnegans.
Where is Finnegan?
Well, Finnegan is in our head, and the fact of the matter is that when we only use conventional language, it puts us to sleep and hypnotizes us. And I don't think it was so much anti-environmental. I don't like that term. I think it was to contrast. It was to highlight unique features of our everyday language by using language in new and inventive ways. Now, I think James Joyce was smart enough to realize that there was a very small percentage of people that would immediately think that that's a good idea. Most people, it's too much work to think to begin with. So it's got to be in the beginning for the people who are interested in avant-garde and new ways of approaching things. But ultimately, I think he thought that this would appeal to more and more people. But it takes anything radically new takes time to percolate through the culture.
Right. That's interesting because you think Joyce's goal, motivation, aspiration was to have many people able to consume the wake, not just highbrow literature people.
I believe that he said that.
Yeah.
There are to that effect. And he was actually a little surprised. He was a little surprised that it did not receive the reception he expected.
He was just surprised that it didn't get the reception that Ulysses got.
Well, Ulysses got a hot reception, but it wasn't well received, and it was a pretty, compared to Finnegan's Wake, a very straightforward book. But I think he had this, somehow he had the idea that people would be able to get something. A lot of people could get something from Finnegan's Wake. As it turned out, it was only kind of a small group of avant-garde readers that like puzzles and uniqueness. So I've contradicted myself. If you notice that, I contradicted myself.
But you mean my whole fallacy's wrong? Yeah, that's good. That's Marcel Duchamp was affecting Joyce when he was writing it. He said, "I'm going to contradict myself so I don't conform to my own ideas." So very good, Duncan. That was beautiful. But let's go back to what Clinton said about anti-environmental, the blending in thing, because I think that Joyce was writing Finnegan's Wake because it blended in to people talking at a coffee house. Because he literally said, when asked who wrote Finnegan's Wake, he says, I didn't write it, those people over there. And we know it's like Joyce listened to shortwave radio in Paris and wrote it all down.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so
if
go
you take
ahead.
that jumble of voices that you overhear when you're sitting in a coffee shop, you're right, that's normal. You take those voices, you put them in a book. That's very weird. Or it's anti-environmental, right? For instance, what if you take a Campbell's soup can in your pantry, it belongs there. If you stick it on a painting like Andy Warhol did, all of a sudden in the wrong environment, now it's a totally different object for scrutiny, right? So yeah, it's
It's a reframing for sure.
mhm.
Reframing, good word.
Well,
So Sarah, go ahead, Duncan.
okay, well, I think it's instructive to look at that quote you used about the Balinese.
Yeah.
We have no art, everything. I think the interesting thing about that quote is I doubt if that's true now. I would imagine that the Balinese are creating a lot of art for the tourist trade. And so it's one of those statements that has a time element to it. It was true at one time. It is probably not true today.
But let's go back, Duncan, for a second. He said the Balinese have no word for art, but they know they're creating product and selling it. They probably know it can become, what do they call it? Commodified. But I know what you're saying because it reminds me of Frank Zappa when he says, I just write this music for myself. And if other people like it, great. And that's romanticizing the fact that he was raised in a consumer society. And he said, I'm a devout capitalist. And he knows if he hits these notes and sings these words, that people will buy his record. Then he can go make more records because he sold his records. He's just not saying, I'm going to cater to what the norm rock music is. So that's like Joyce. I wanted to ask Sarah. Sarah, what do your friends say when you go, I'm reading Finnegan's Wake? I mean, what have you gotten from it? Do you try to convince them to try it, or what's that situation like? I mean, are you?
I'm
because
sure
you've
that's
go ahead.
happened a number of times to me, and I've talked about it a lot, and they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That seems weird. I don't get it. So I kind of get that a lot.
Yeah.
So, I tend to overload people with information, or I'll try to explain certain concepts in the book, and it doesn't always come off well, but yeah, you try.
Is it frustrating, or you still pursue?
It's not so frustrating. I can talk about it with my family members, and they understand it for the most part. So, often when we're having our week group, I'll just kind of run down, I'll just say oh, this is what happened this week. And, if I have a little realization, I'll try to communicate it. That's how you learn, is by trying to teach and, inform other people, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I try, even though it's probably falls on deaf ears, or, people probably want me to stop talking about it. So I have had friends say that they weren't fans of James Joyce, but didn't really give me much of a reason why. So
yeah.
To each his own.
What have you gotten? Because I mean, I think you and Duncan have just started reading Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people over the last year because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's sort of no, Duncan, you started before that in a live group.
Yes, in the live group. Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
only been a year for virtual groups.
Yeah. So Sarah, we'll start with you. What have you gotten from reading Finnegan's Wake with a group of people? What has it done
Socializing.
for you?
Yeah, it gives me a little bit more structure. The idea that I get to socialize and like talk to people about these ideas, it's kind of it keeps me kind of grounded, and I'm seeing what other people are interested in. So I'm getting different outlooks, getting to discuss things. So yeah, that's what I get from it.
Yeah. Duncan, what have you gotten from reading Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people?
Well, the people for one thing. And two, it's kind of a joke. I mean, Finnegan's Wake has given me the skill to read almost any other book easily.
Nice. Why don't you suss that out? Why would a book that's a bunch of gibberish make you read other books better?
Well, it's not actually a bunch of gibberish. I mean, that's not true. James Joyce is it's jazz. It's avant-garde jazz, and you have to learn how to listen to it. And I learned how to listen to it because I was familiar with some of his other writing. I knew he could write very clearly. And so he had to have some kind of reason. As far as I know, he didn't have a brain disease. It suddenly grabbed him. So I took it on faith that Finnegan's Wake was, there was meat, sustenance in it. The thing with where I had tried it on my own before, and I'm not one of these. I met a few people who said, "Oh yeah, I learned about it when I was a teenager, and I sat down and I read the whole thing straight through." Well, I couldn't do that. But when I found a group of people that were reading it together, and then having some very interesting conversations afterwards, and would make references to reference books connected with it. I thought, okay, well, this is one of these things that's just going to take a long time, and I'm probably going to have to study other things and talk to other people, and but eventually it'll become clearer and clearer, somewhat. So it's led me to developing a huge library of reference books, which I enjoy. At this point, I enjoy my reference books more because they're a visual display of all the different ways to interpret Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah, it's
And
stunning. Go ahead.
And it's great, but it's like studying philosophy. If you concentrate on one philosopher, he makes a hell of a lot of sense. But then you turn to another philosopher whose philosophy is radically different, and lo and behold, they're making a lot of sense too. So it puts you in the space of what, Anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah, that was good because it reminded me of, again, Robert Anton Wilson saying that reading Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people is like playing chess on 4 chessboards that are stacked up on top of each other, but you have to jump the pieces to the different layer. It's not playing 4 different games. It's jumping the pieces to the different levels. But Clint, you're well versed in Marshall. Why did Marshall get so obsessed with the Wake? I mean, give us a little background on that, please.
Right. Well, Marshall McLuhan really liked. Right. What he was developing was sort of, we could call it a psychodynamic or a theory of mind, where it's like, how do people think? Right. But he was developing it entirely based out of what their environment was made of. So he thought how people thought had a lot more to do with everything outside of them than whatever type of person they were. Right? He wasn't interested in modeling people's heads based on some idea of what's going on inside of different people's heads. He was like, what's going on in your head is entirely a function of where you are and how it is you're interacting with and seeing and perceiving and sensing your environment. And a different environment is going to create a different sort of person. And Finnegan's Wake, he thought, was exactly the sort of book that had that as its main theme. Each of the Thunders was a new medium, and the way people were speaking in that section of the book was based on how people were when they were exposed with that. After that medium, he saw the book going through cycles of history, sort of in the way of Giambattista Vico, who was this Italian thinker who saw patterns reoccurring. He didn't see history repeating, but he saw patterns reoccurring cyclically throughout history. And so when McLuhan was reading Finnegan's Wake, he thought, oh, look, Joyce recognizes how mankind, developed their way unconsciously through all of these stages based on, their inventions and their environments. And that's what the story is about. That's what Finnegan's Wake is about, right? To him. That was his particular interpretation. I'm sure the book is open to very many other interpretations, but that's what he was always looking for when he looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
That was really well put. And you guys jump in anytime you raise your hand or jump in. But the one thing I'd love to go round robin with a word that Clinton just brought up was thinking. So you talked about avant-garde jazz, Duncan, and one of my heroes is Thelonious Monk. He said that music is math, but you hear a monk and it sort of sounds like math, but it really sounds like it's coming from his heart or soul. So Turing in 1950 asked, is thinking a function of the soul? So we'll start with you, Sarah. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I would say yes. Going into it a little bit deeper, maybe not. Depends on what you think of a soul. Maybe a soul is tied to the heart, in which case there's not too much thinking involved.
Yeah, because I was going to have you suss that out. What is the word soul? What is it connected to sensory-wise in the human body?
I think we're making it up. That's just my knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't know the root word of soul. Does anybody?
Yeah. Well, we can look it up, but that's interesting. You mean we made up the word. It's like, what is consciousness? And so
I know Vico would say, oh, we have like a soul of the shoe. So it's like that's something we gave to an object. So
right.
That's an example from New Science, like that I vaguely remember.
Yeah. Okay, Duncan, is thinking a function of the soul? That was good, Sarah. Thank you.
No, not necessarily at all. Most of what passes for thinking are just tapes. They're just learned tapes. Some people learn their tapes from Fox News and the church. Some people learn their tapes from Jane Austen. They're just tapes. I think Gurdjieff is a good person to refer to here. I don't necessarily recommend him as a guru, but I think that his view that most people are just running on automatic all the time is a valid view. I mean, we're seeing that right now. At least half the conversations going on related to COVID are not thinking. They're just tapes. They're just things people heard and repeat over and over because someone asked them a question and you got to say something. Or they see something that they're confused about, and so they look and see what tape might fit this. I have a peculiar definition of soul. You've heard me say it before. Soul is that awareness that comes when we're quiet and we let the little spirit birds come nest peacefully in our hearts and talk to us. That's soul.
Oh, that is nice. Jay says that his goal is to see. His teacher taught him to see his breath, like see your breath, and not literally like when you're in cold temperature you see your breath, but to concentrate on seeing your breath. So it's sort of like that state of nothingness or meditative state where you're just a vessel to breathe. Is that more what you're saying, Duncan?
Well, perhaps so. I think what I'm saying is that most of our environment, the environment for most people is media of one sort or another. And that, although people will prattle on about nature and the ecological cycle and all that, very few people actually sit and observe it. Instead, they listen to NPR or PBS or Fox, or read the New York Times, or buy, the latest philosopher's book. And all those things are great, except somewhere there needs to be just contact with something besides media.
Yeah. Isn't it great? We can go on a Zoom and tell people that. Like they're tuning in to us to tell them that they're doing what they're doing. But it is beautiful. And I really appreciate all your times and energy here. This is amazing because Clinton, is thinking a function of the soul?
The way I think the soul is that which is shaped over time by thinking. As I've understood it, it's like soul and spirit. Like the spirit is active, and it's doing stuff, and it eventually leaves its mark and imprints on the soul. The soul is listening, and the soul is figuring stuff out, and the soul changes slowly over time, and grows and develops and comes to take on the form of whatever spirits are doing in the here and now over and over again. That's the definition that I would be most familiar with. And just to answer your question, Sarah, I happen to have a book here.
Cool.
On the soul. It's Aristotle's On the Soul, and right at the start, the author purposes, we're using the word soul in exactly the sense that Aristotle used the word psyche, P-S-U-C-H-E, with a bar on top. So I flipped around. I didn't see a very succinct definition, and why would you? The whole book is probably the whole definition. But psyche, I guess, is...
What is that? It's like just the Greek version of soul?
Yeah, I think so. Or it's
Cool.
it's the Greek word that came to mean whatever we mean when we say soul. Yeah.
Well, here's
we
what
replace one
etymology...
question with another.
Yeah. Here's what etymology says. A substantial entity believed to be that in each person which lives, feels, thinks, and wills. From Old English, S-A-W-O-L, spiritual and emotional part of a person, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets down to of uncertain origin. That's my favorite 3 words in etymology. But then it is sometimes said to mean originally coming from or belonging to the sea, because it was supposed to be the stopping place of the soul before birth and after death. From the lake, meaning spirit of a deceased person. That's from Old English 971. And then, it goes on, but it's distinguishing soul from spirit is a matter best left to theologians. So it's interesting that Turing, is his other question is, can machines think? So let's go round robin with this question. Sarah, we'll start with you. Can Finnegan's Wake think?
It's not a machine. I thought you were going to ask me about machines. It's a book. Oh. It's from the mind of James Joyce, so some thought was put into it. Can the inanimate book think? No. And I will say before, I'm sorry about stopping to ask, what does a soul mean? I live in Los Angeles, lots of soulless people out here. So that's why, sorry about that.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to apologize. What we want you to do is ask questions. We're all about inventing new questions and new metaphors. We're just having fun here. You have to realize that the word funeral is fun for all. That's Finnegan's Wake is a fun for all. So we just have fun. Please, it's sort of stagey how I'm the host. I want you guys to jump in and say that's bullshit. I want to go this direction. Feel free, but
right,
that was
a good bone to pick with Duncan. Like Duncan, I read Finnegan's Wake, so I don't have to think about current events. So every time you bring up like Fox News, I'm like, why? Why are you bringing up COVID? I'm just saying, that's why I'm reading the book, so I don't have to. I can think about Tiernanog and like Irish problems. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, don't think about the Irish problems too deeply, or you'll be.
I'm not. I'm an American. I wouldn't.
But it is beautiful because
reading Irish problems and Irish history is like reading the history of Jerusalem. What a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that. I just hope everybody is blessed and, everybody's safe. God bless everyone. We're not going to touch on Afghanistan tonight, are we? It's.
Well, now that you
had to bring that up, didn't you, sir?
Hey, you were about to go into it. I just wanted to do it before you did. I'm just saying.
I hadn't even crossed my thinking mind.
Yeah.
But Duncan, tell the joke. Who can tell the joke the best about the little kid who gets a pony in the room and he's got to dig it out of a room full of shit? Does anybody know that joke?
The old shit pony.
Sounds like your childhood, Gerry. Sorry.
No, I thought Duncan, okay. So, the dad gives the little boy a pony for his birthday, and then it's in a room full of shit. So he has to go into this room and find the pony in the room, and so it's like, I'm not getting the punchline right, but it's sort of like what Sarah, you brought up was interesting because my friend complains about his son because he just plays violent video games.
Mm-hmm.
So I find a McLuhan book on his shelf, and he's a great dad, and he's a really good person and a political activist, and he sits in the kitchen and we're talking as the son's playing violent video games in the other room, and he's complaining to me about his son playing violent video games while out of NPR in the room it's the same thing. War, 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 war. So it's like, what difference? So it's like this environment that we're caught up in, like, let's not go there. So we empower that which we don't want to go into. But again, it's freedom of choice. We pick and choose. So, I think this thing about Duncan using the word tapes was really interesting. So we're on like an automatic pilot kind of. That's what we're trying to do with this series, is sort of jump out of our automatic pilot with our stock lines, and we have these tapes. So you guys have heard me say the same stuff over and over a million times, but that is like what we learned is that anything we invent extends some humanness. So once we extend our humanness with words or pencils or cell phones, then we start to imitate the hidden psychic effects of those inventions. So Clinton can explain this. This is what Bob Dobbs calls the android meme. He says basically humans have disappeared, and it's just like Duncan said, tapes talking to tapes. The humans aren't even there anymore. So Marshall said this in his hold on, one more little thing, Sarah. Marshall said this in his album. So in the 60s, he put out an album produced by a big, music producer, John Simon, who did Janis Joplin. And in the album, he says, we shape our tools, then they shape us. So, he got it from Winston Churchill. We shape our buildings, then they shape us. But on the album, there's a little parrot saying, we shape our tools, then they ape us. So saying our tools start to mimic us, or do we start to mimic our tools' hidden psychic effects? Like Duncan's metaphor, we just turn these tapes on. So go ahead, Sarah, and then Clinton. Go ahead, Sarah. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You take in so much information, you kind of start to parrot it in a way. Like I know I certainly do that, so I think I understand it. So if I read something in Finnegan's Wake or something about the wake, I'm excited to talk about it. I'm usually the person, is it really my idea? Probably not. It's just what I've been reading. So that I think that's most people. I have like a TikTok account, and that's something. Do you happen to have TikTok?
I want one bad, please.
I'm really scared about it, what it's doing to me, because it's like sometimes like I'll just watch a TikTok like 10 times in a row and it'll be stuck in my head, and I kind of worry what it's doing to me. I don't know. So,
well, here's the big thing I would say is you can worry about what spoken words do to you. You can worry about what printed words do to you, and you can worry about what electronic words do you. You can worry about everything humans invent.
Yeah.
That's what we do, is we study the hidden psychic effects. So, you don't want to get obsessed, but Clinton, tell us what the android meme is, how it applies to this discussion, just in simple terms.
Right. So, when America was being colonized, the settlers were moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, building the train tracks, working on the frontier, moving west. And you had to build a new town every year. You had to build, societies as you went, carving them out of the woods, more or less, right? All right. And so all of the books were know-how books. They were literature. Here's how you build a town before winter comes, so that you've got a log cabin to live in, so that you can then move down the line and build the next log. Your kids can build the next log cabin 50 miles down the way, whatever. It's a gross exaggeration. But the point is, America was built on books because books were new, and all the books they had were the important books they needed to build a civilization. And so in the beginning, America was an extremely logical, know-how, no shits, rugged sort of culture, literarily, like as in the form of like what they were reading, the content of their books, right? This is a way that the culture was shaped, and that's how you could have presidential debates eventually, where it's like, oh, it's like 8 hours of this guy's turn, okay, 8 hours of that guy's turn, right? Like meticulously arguing over these ridiculously large, convoluted sentences and laws that form the base of American law, which now people find, extremely arcane and long-winded, right? Because this was the language that was necessary to for the mindset that was built, right? This is how now fast forward, everything is telegraphed, marketing points and jingles and slogans that get stuck in your head. They're designed to get stuck in your head because artists took up the job of making all the advertisements. Or first, advertisers took on the job of moving stock prices and manipulating stocks by saying, "Oh, pork bellies are going up, up, up," and "Oh, like soap is in the gutter," and all these like poetic phrases to try and get people to sell their shares in pork bellies and all this nonsense, right? But as things get faster and faster and faster due to more technology, things get snippier and snippier and more ADHD, if you like. And now that there's so many large cities, you get to spend so much of your day talking to people that you barely know and acting like your friends. Civilization isn't this magical machine where total strangers act polite to each other and pretend that they know each other and act all chummy. Right? I help customers every day at my store. Hi, how's it going? Oh yeah, I've never seen this jerk before in my entire life. He's probably an asshole, but he's my best friend for 2 minutes until I take his money and tell him to have a good day. Right? We're all right. So we have to have things in common with all these total strangers who we're seeing every day, all the time. And the only thing that's there is pop culture and advertisements and the weather, which is why everyone just talks about the weather, right? And the mark of a well-adjusted person is that they don't mind small talk and they love talking about the weather with someone for a short amount of time. And the poorly adjusted people are the ones who go around as like, I hate small talk. No one talks about anything meaningful. Why aren't we talking about Afghanistan? It's like, well, because I'm just trying to enjoy my coffee at McDonald's. Like, come on, like, geez, lay off. You're too intense, right?
I'm
So it's
definitely not one for small talk.
You're not one for small talk. Yeah. Well, how long have you worked in customer service?
Gosh, I'm still in it. So I probably about like 8 or 9 years, something like that.
Do you like it?
Yeah. I feel like I need people to an extent. I can definitely talk to anybody for the most part if you catch me at the right mood. TikTok has diagnosed me with ADHD, so I don't know. Maybe it's masking. I just learned that.
Did you say TikTok is?
Yeah.
That's good. Hey, wait. It's
Yeah.
like this. Instead of saying, how about the weather? People go, what about COVID? No, there you go. How about that page 101 in the wake? Have you read that yet? Do small talk. Do small talk with people. But Clint, you went off too far at a tangent. What is the Android meme?
Oh, sure. The point is,
zoom in on that for a second. Yeah, because that was good. Because I want to hear Duncan's reaction to all this. What you gave a good little cliff notes there.
Yeah, well, I guess I was trying to build up to it. The point is, we all need an identity. This is who we are, but this has to be an identity which is recognizable to strangers. We want to be identified and seen and recognized and be validated and affirmed. This is who I really am. As we walk down the street and meet the people who are supposed to see who we are immediately and treat us the way we want to be seen immediately. They don't even know who the hell we are. People become the most cookie cutter, stereotype, typical, right? They immediately try to ooze their self out, like ooze their guts out of their self all at once and be instantly recognizable so that no one can mistake who they really are. And this is, this form of, this has been going on for most of post-war of the 20th century, right? It's funny. If you look at footage of people in the 50s, they all look the same. All the men have the same suit walking down the street and they all wear a hat. But they were apparently individuals. And now everyone is like, wow, I'm wildly me. And no one else looks like me. And it's true. No one's wearing the same color combination or has the same tattoos, but everyone's got a tattoo and everyone's got crazy colors on and everyone's got a piercing. And they're like, this is who I am. And they're all exactly the same people, right? At that point. Yeah. So it's like individualism versus conformity. Just you always have both, and it's always at different levels. And our friend Bob here, by the time you get to the Android meme, what he's talking about is culture is built up of culture talking to culture, where it's like a movie comes out so that the newspaper can come out saying, hey, a new movie came out, so that the magazine can then have the actors from that, and then the actors from that can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then the movie can then have the movie, and then on the cover of their magazines so that the actors can go on TV and say, yeah, I was on the cover of this magazine. And the entire culture is just the TV talking to the magazine, talking to the newspaper, talking about this movie, right? And the people aren't even there anymore except to do their role to make these media things talk to each other so that then people can go and they can buy the button and the lunch bag and the merchandise for that film and talk about it for 6 months on the internet, right? And live in this world of content where reality itself is blasted away altogether from their, perceptions of it. So
that's perfect, because that's why I always yell at the Finnegan's Wake Club. There's no content in this book. And then they're all like, there is. I'm studying every word carefully. And then Sherry would go, the great Sherry, our goddess queen, said, she'd go, Gerry, aren't you going to tell us there's no content? Because I think that's what the Wake Reading Club is, sort of what you described in a way, but then it's the opposite. So it's we shape our tools and they shape us. We shape our tools and they ape us. But that was really good. You brought up a lot there, Clinton. I'd love to hear Duncan. Tell us what you think about what we were just talking about, Duncan. Any feelings?
Well, let me ask you a question, Duncan. So the android, it seems the implication is that people, what used to be called people, are now actually androids. And what used to be called conversation are now just exchanges of memes of one sort or another.
yeah, and that was always Richard Dawkins' original idea of the meme. Now I find it a dehumanizing way of looking at things. I think there's always people underneath all the stuff. But yeah, the idea of that the meme, right? We are just, the way that memes reproduce. So it's the memes collectively doing all the work, and a meme exists across multiple brains as a single organism, and then we're all just one of its tentacles going about while the thought as a whole is spread, across. Now Dawkins was not a McLuhan guy. He was not looking at the medium itself, right? He wasn't, right? He's just one of these people who information. Sarah, just because I'm on a roll here, you said, oh yeah, I'm always taking in, information in different forms and whatnot. Information is sort of like the new 20th century term for like ether or substance of media content, right?
Yeah.
It's like a generic term. There's information in a book, there's information in a TV. It's as though you're watching a newscast, or you're reading a newspaper or a blog post, or you're listening to a YouTube video to try and pull the fact out of that medium, as though the fact is what you're after, and you could get the same fact from this and the same fact from that, and it wouldn't matter, right? It's like everyone learns a different way, but the information is this supposed like single thing that can be contained in all these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And McLuhan was the guy who was saying, no, that's not true at all. Like, that's complete baloney, right? There is no such thing as information. There's just you in relation to this machine that's doing poetry on you, right? And this machine does different poetry on you. And if you're thinking you're looking at the information, then you're ignoring how your engagement with this or the other is shaping your total perceptual awareness of the whole world, and who it is you can talk to, and who it is you can relate to, and whose body language makes sense to you and whose body language doesn't make sense to you, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, but I think it's both, Clinton, and let them talk a little, because that was good, because it's like it's a little bit of both, though, because this is what we do daily in our group. I find some headline, somebody dies, and I find a tool in their obituary, like we're going to do coddle. What does coddling do? Where did it come from? Did humans invent coddling? And so, then we're taking content and trying to break it down, how it shapes our behavior by doing tetrads with other human beings. So, yeah, I mean, it's a reflection, but go ahead, Duncan. Did you want to continue reacting to what we were just saying, or Sarah, anything? But that was really good what you brought up, Clint.
Yeah, I agree with it. I know what they say, like data is the new oil, and
Data is the new oil.
That's the big thing. Like, these companies want to research us, get as much information as possible. What are our wants? What are our needs? How do you tap into that? What is the next big thing? Yeah.
This is the new version of the manuals. All those manuals you referred to with the railroads for building towns.
Mhm.
The real manuals were in the railroad companies. And the real thing that was going on was the railroad was a profit-making, power-seeking entity. And it needed towns every so often to establish water and coal stations and customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And they also had to kill off the Indians along the way because Indians did not make good customers. So they preferred to focus on the Europeans. Europeans made good customers. And you could get them to live, within so many miles of you get some of them to actually live in these railroad towns. And then, you could get the cranks to move a little bit further, and they may have to, ride their wagon or horse in a day or two to get to town. But they were always coming to town. They needed supplies. Okay. Okay, so that's one thing that comes to my mind. Another thing that comes to my mind is the conceit of Western culture is that we are finding ourselves, finding our real selves. And I would like to contend that's kind of bullshit. That's just another way to sell product, in a sense.
Yeah.
There's no real self to find. We can build selves if we want to. But there's no, this thing about I just want to be accepted for myself. That's only legitimate in minorities, in despised minorities who just want to be recognized as human beings. That's a legitimate complaint that they can make. But anybody who's a member of the dominant white culture, fairly well educated, the conceit that we're looking for, we just want people to accept us for our real self is just kind of bullshit, And what I mean by bullshit is not a good use of energy at all. A better use of energy is that, first of all, we're perfect to begin with. But if we want to build a temporary self that has certain talents, we can do that. We can study, under teachers, we can read books, we can put in the effort to become, reasonably adroit at any number of things. Music, painting, accounting. Believe it or not, there's probably some people who are really into accounting. And that's the thing. Because our real selves, and here I'm betraying my prejudices here. Our real selves are already fucking perfect, and we don't need anybody's validation. Because all those people we're looking for validation from are basically ourselves. I mean, you'll hear me go over this. This will become ridiculously. Harry's going to go into the thing again. There's only one mind, and all we have to do is realize that, and things will be so much better.
Duncan, no, that was beautiful, Duncan. It was beautiful. I really, I think it's important because it's perfect on our theme because, it's this all at onceness that, you know, when we're reading the wake with a group of people out loud, it's like we're one living organism. And I think when Marshall said that violence is a human search for identity, is, you know, what Clinton sort of brought up is how we, for some reason, want to figure out, who am I? And, you know, Alan Watts says every Sunday on the radio to me, yeah, don't worry about finding out who you are. If you find out who you are, then you're fucked. Like, you know, but we still want to be, you know, we're each in our little box and we're saying our thing. And what you said, Duncan, touched me deeply, and it's a positive, meaningful thing. But I think that what you say is you say this thing sometimes where you go, well, I'm just talking bullshit here. And like, to me, the snake oil salesman in the bullshitter is the highest art form. But it sounds like a scam to say that, because it's not the proper thing to say. You want people to be honest. But I think that's what you're good at, is that you will admit sometimes, or say I'm going to bullshit here a little. And I say that too. And people like look at me like, what? You're trying to, you know, get out of this, you know, but I use the word bullshit because you have a good bullshit detector. And I think that's what people are doing by reading Finnegan's Wake out loud, is they're raising their awareness. He's saying Finnegan's Wake and figure out what language is doing to you. So they said it's language about language, and that humans do fail. The filmmaker I interviewed the other day, I says, was this like Beckett when he says fail once, then fail again better? And he goes, no, it's like fail again once and then fail worse. Like he was just admitting that it is the human condition to fall and then get back up. So I think that you saying what you just said, Duncan, was really important, because it is, are we really separate beings, or are we just all Finnegans, you know, and we're all swimming in the same soup here? I think what one thing is that the wake is no beginning and no end. It's all middle. This is what Eric McLuhan says in his book. It's all middle. It's all the gap. It's all the in-betweenness. McLuhan said the gap is where the action is. So let's try this one, because we're bringing up a lot of data and information coming out of each one of us, and I really appreciate it. This is exactly what I was hoping for. But let's start with you, Sarah. What's one unresolved question you have about Finnegan's Wake? It's sort of like asking, what's the gap? Like we're one more. Sorry, before you. Yeah, but hold on one second, because this is what I want to say. What you, Duncan and Clinton, were talking about identity. It reminds me of Peter Quadrino, who does such a great job running the Austin, Texas Finnegan's Wake group. And he says, well, we're Wakians, we're Joyceans, we're nerds, you know, and that's fine. But it's like he's feeling more comfortable when in essence, we're just people reading a book. And we're not like, we don't have, some of us are more, you know, versed in this specialty. Stevie's a Shakespeare specialist, you know. So it's interesting how we have our specialties, but we're all just one mind swimming around in this, you know, soup of words. So anyway, sorry, Sarah, what's a question that remains unresolved for you in regards to the wake?
I'm curious about Joyce's ultimate reason for it. He was somebody that lived in synchronicity, like coincidences like meant a lot to him. So I'm really curious what it meant to him to finish the book, or what would it be? Well, like why? Why did he do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Duncan, what's a question unresolved for you?
All my unresolved questions are mine. You know, like I want to know, did James Joyce teach any Japanese or Chinese when he was teaching English in Trieste or Paris? I mean, and that's just a mundane question.
Well, no, it's not much. Dave. That's
I
good.
don't really have a big overarching question. You know, it's I'm going to say two things. Okay, one, the question you asked Sarah about when you talk about Finnegan's Wake to other people who are not knowingly involved in the Finnegan's Wake group, you know, what about that? And my answer to that is just mention it. Just drop it.
Yeah.
If someone takes the bait and wants to go with it, positive or negative, I'm going to learn something. But you know, I lived in Japan for 6 years, and you know what? Anybody who lives overseas for a lengthy period of time will tell you the same thing. When you come back, nobody's really interested. They don't want to hear your tales. They don't want to hear what you learned. I mean, if you want to throw a few bonbons in every once in a while, well, in Japan, the Japanese, blah blah blah. Keep it to 2 minutes. Unless somebody asks a question, don't go, because they just don't care. So it's kind of like with the same thing with the wake. If you visit the odd little country called Finnegan's Wake, and you hang out with people who are Finnegans trying to wake, you know, anybody who's outside that milieu, they really don't give a shit. You know, it's, oh, I tried to read the Wake one. Boy, that's a pretty fucking crazy book. Or really? Why do you do that? You know, whatever. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah,
I'll just say this.
that
Yeah,
was good, Duncan. Go ahead, Sarah.
I have no trouble imposing my views on my friends and family, and like if I'm excited about something, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
Honestly, I look for ways to bring up subjects that I am interested in. Like that's just how I can kind of relate most things, you know, about James Joyce. I can do that like probably 365 days a year. Like it's not that hard. So that's just something. It's like, yeah, it's pretty easy at this point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I used to do that.
yeah.
I still sometimes get on a roll and do it. I mean, obviously, I can get pretty aggressive sometimes in discussion.
And again, you don't want to bore people, but it's
believe
just,
me, I am so much better than I used to be. And by better, I just mean I save my energy. And,
That's good. Duncan. It's like when I meet these younger people and they get into the wake through Terrence McKenna, and that's usually the way they might have a little Joseph Campbell, but a lot is Terrence McKenna. And then I find them being interested and their ears perk up and we're at a party and talking. And then I go into the advice from Bob Dylan that he learned from the Bible. Don't ever tell anyone everything you know. And that's like when Peter Quadrino came to our Finnegan's Wake reading club like 10 years ago in Marina del Rey. After the meeting, I told him everything I know. And then like 2 meetings ago, he goes, yeah, I got The Pound Era by Hugh Kenner immediately. You know, I mean, I've never even read the book. I just know that that's an important book to read to understand the wake. So it is an amazing like jujitsu of how you deal with this. Clinton, what's it's like more like this too. if you had James Joyce at a dinner party, what would you ask him? What's a question that remains unresolved for you about Finnegan's Wake?
Oh, sure. Okay, that's good. Again, it's only because I haven't scratched the surface of these questions. Maybe everyone here else knows, right? It would basically be, I mean, how much was he winging it for the form to then still come out so cohesive at the end? How did so you write this book for what, 10, 15 years?
17.
17 years.
17 years, yes. 1 year for each chapter.
Linearly, because you're serializing it, so you got to do it from beginning to end. And so
No, he did it.
No, he didn't.
it wasn't serialized, or it wasn't written in order.
It wasn't written.
There's
in
no
order.
end to it. It's cyclical.
Yeah, there
Okay,
is
so,
no
I mean, he's
order.
writing, and after 17 years, he's like, hey, now I can just wrap it up if I make this paragraph end, with the start of the book, with a, river run. Okay, it's a loop. The end, right?
It's like, it's not order, it's disorder in the court. It's the Three Stooges.
But I guess what I'm saying is the order the book was serialized in, like, was it written in page by page by page linearity, or did the middle come first and then he wrote an earlier section that was published later?
See, I should have an answer to that. I have several books that go into that topic, but all I can do is give you the most general answers.
He was walking back upstairs and he dropped all the pages and he put them back together in a different order, and no one noticed.
Yeah, he just threw the pages up. But Duncan knows. I mean, he knows. The thing is that people specialize, and he knows where to go to find that answer. But the point is, Clint, it's simple. There's a great line that's repeated all the time where the guy says, how's the book coming, James Joyce? And he goes, well, I got 12 words I've been working on for a week. He goes, what's taking you so long? He says, I'm trying to get them in the right order.
Right.
Mhm.
Fair enough.
So literally that he sort of answered that. Go ahead, Duncan.
Well, let me make the comment. Actually, there is a beginning and an end. It's not all middle. But the interesting part is the beginning and the end can actually be anywhere in the book. It's all a matter of, I mean, the book is printed, so it's got River Run, and then it's got Alone Away, blah, blah, blah. And then it ends with and then it goes back into River Run. But from my point of view, and this is just me, the thing about the world in our individual lives is we punctuate things pretty arbitrarily. Relationships are very much this way. And much argumentation in relationship occurs because the partners in the relationship are punctuating in different places.
I mean, like
She's thinking about what was just said, and he's thinking about what was said 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And different punctuation. Oh, I just threw that. I don't know why I threw that in. But it has to do with my theme that, in a sense, any place can be the beginning and the end.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. That was good, Duncan. Yeah.
I have no evidence for this, but I do suspect that he used multiple sources, not just Vico's New Science, to base Finnegan's Wake off of. So I think he used multiple books and to give it somewhat of a structure, somewhat of like a cohesive narrative. I think there's different layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something I believe. Tried looking at the Annals of Ireland like a couple of months ago, and I haven't read all of that yet, but hopefully I'll get through that just so I could carve out something with this book. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah,
Okay,
listen,
so, like he's got these myths, and he knows he's telling these story or that story, and it's going to come out somehow on whatever he's working on day to day. But how it's going to come out, right? But
Sarah set this up perfect because back to Eric McLuhan's book, just reading, Joyce's awareness of other Menippean authors is undisputed. He was in his library, he had Chaucer, he had Rabelais, he had Lawrence Sterne, he had Ezra Pound's cantos, he had Burton's translation of the Book of a Thousand Nights and a Night. He was extensively knowledgeable on Lewis Carroll, Flaubert, Swift, Cervantes, Giordano Bruno. It's endless. You know, he was ripping off everybody, you know, and he was reinventing them, not ripping them off. But let me just read this because this, again, that was a perfect intro, Sarah, and Duncan and Clinton's question was perfect. This is Eric, you know, from his dad, Marshall, writing this book. The pursuit of the narrative in Finnegan's wake, that's the Menippean satirist's red herring. It's had the effect of diverting critical attention from the most crucial and most Menippean characteristic of the wake, its language. This effect conforms to T.S. Eliot's famous dictum about the function of meaning in the ordinary sense in a poem. That is, it serves as the choice piece of meat carried by the burglar to distract the house dog of your mind while the poem goes about its work unhindered. So we know T.S. Eliot said poetry can communicate before it's understood. I don't understand Finnegan's Wake. Now I've surrendered after 25 years of using these guides, and I just sit there and let Peter tell us what the guides tell us. And I just sort of want to float in a cloud like I don't know anything. So I can just hear all this stuff. Go ahead, Sarah.
I love that you brought that up. From what I understand, like a lot of religious figures tend to believe that wisdom is something that we already know. So when you're confronted by it, you're like, oh, I actually knew that ahead. Like, it's just something like you feel.
Yeah.
And I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, because I remember when I was reading Ulysses, like it was an instance like, oh, I know exactly what he's like. I feel this, like I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Duncan, that was perfect, Sarah. Duncan, go ahead.
I think this fits in right here. I read something really beautiful to me, at least, several days ago. It said the ocean waves speak in verses, not sentences.
Yeah.
And that struck me because it seemed like, you know, you could easily take ocean waves and actually just say life. Life actually speaks in verses, not sentences.
Yeah.
There's a pun there, but
there's a lot of puns. You know, here's the greatest, Clinton, brilliant. This is McLuhan on Joyce. The pun is the paradoxical exuberance of being. No, he said Joyce uses the pun as the paradoxical exuberance of being.
oh.
So that is the essence of being, is that you embrace paradox and that you can say there's no meaning to the wake. And then you can say, no, there's lots of meaning, you know, so that he's trying to, you know, the other thing is he's trying to dig. There's this metaphor that Joyce said, I'm trying to dig through a mountain. I'm coming in from this side and this side, and I'm trying to meet in the middle, you know. But it's just like, it's like Duncan saying the waves. that an ocean wave speaks in verses, not sentences. That's why it's all presaging and predicted.
Ocean waves, ocean waves.
Oh, yeah, because it's Frank Zappa saying the ocean is the ultimate solution. It took me 30 years to realize that solution there has two meanings. That we can turn to the ocean and learn how to exist, or we can go. It's the ultimate solution to go swimming in. And when Franken released his first album, he listed James Joyce as one of his influences. And, you know, maybe he read a little of Ulysses. Who knows? I don't know what Joyce he read. But in the middle of one of his songs, he says the crux is the apostrophe. That the big meaning of everything is the apostrophe. So that's why Joyce took an American Irish folk song. You know, Duncan helped us get this book. This is an amazing book. It's unbelievable.
I was trying to get that book today.
Yes, it's amazing.
No luck.
And it's basically saying, how did Joyce get an American Irish folk song and say, oh, well, that's the name of my book, but all I got to do is get rid of the apostrophe, instead of saying it's this guy Finnegan's, his wake service. It's no, Finnegan's wake. All you Finnegans, wake the fuck up and figure out what language is doing to you, or better yet, what electronic word is doing to you. Because that's what electricity was, the main thing that Joyce was talking about. You know, he was talking about TV. Well, not main. There's many things, but one of the main things is like, we got this new thing, TV, coming in right now in 1939. Last thing about the little quote was T.S. Eliot said, I had the experience, but missed the meaning. That's what he talked about poetry. So you can read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people and have no discussion what it means. We do that. Duncan and I do that in Dublin with Sweeney's Pharmacy. Now, there is some discussion. It's a half hour, an hour of discussion. But the main chunk of the reading group is 1 hour of just reading the Wake. And it really changed my whole thing about the Wake. I stopped going, oh, what's this? Oh, I take a note. What's that mean? What's this? You just let it flow over you like a hot shower, or like you're swimming in the ocean. And it's like you start cracking up and you know, having fun, and you don't realize you're in the midst of, you're supposed to be reading a book, which means you're supposed to be having narrative contact with the author. The author's supposed to be communicating something to you. You're not just supposed to be singing Louie Louie, you know, garbled rock and roll lyrics that, you know, people can't make out what the lyrics mean or what they're saying. You're just singing along. It's like anthem rock. You just sing along. It's pretty amazing how I learned that difference in the Wake. You know, and for 25 years, I wasn't that free with the Wake until I attended the Sweeney's group.
Well, so how other people, the rhythms that they're bringing to it. You know, it really is improvisation. It's like improvisation. And it's like Thelonious Monk and Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Bird in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, John Hendricks said that Charlie Parker was the highest form of talking ever. And if you listen to bebop, Charlie Parker play a saxophone, it is him talking, but it's not in words. You know, T.S. Eliot said, when I talk to you, I got to use words. So let's just tackle one more little thing. I really appreciate this. This has been highly enlightening for me.
We're
And I
gonna
wish
read it, right?
Yeah, we're going to read it, but I want to ask one more thing before. All times are happening now. Now, Frank Zappa said it, James Joyce said it. When Wyndham Lewis says that, we live in the present and write a detailed history of the future, it's sort of like, now there's time. Right now is now. And it's 8:54 p.m. and this is now. But how could all times be happening now? So we'll just go around. What's just off the top of your head? What does that mean to you? We'll start with you, Clinton. All times are happening now. It might be a word called simultaneity in the McLuhan world too. But what do you think? It's not what you think Joyce means, but what do you think it means for you?
Well, when the past is present, or you're in a timeless moment. If you're walking in nature, then there is no time. Nature looked like this 1,000 years ago. It's gonna look like this 1,000 years from hence, and there's nothing around you that would make you think that it's 8:55, whatsoever, right? It's about if time is just a change that you experience, and your place in history, or your place in the moment, or your place in the week, then depending on where you are, you're in and out of time all the time. And that's before to say how in touch you are with the latest and greatest thing, or whether you're aware of what's happening on the news or not. Because whether you are or whether you're not depends on when you are. I had a teacher who would tape the hockey game, because he worked throughout all of the hockey game, and then it was like a game to try and get home and go do the groceries and go to the bank and do all this stuff and then get home to go watch the hockey game without someone spoiling the score for him, right? Because if one person had to go, hey man, the Leafs won, and then it's like, oh fuck, right? It ruined everything, right? But as long as you could avoid that spoiler, right, you could make it home and you could watch it, and it would be just like he was watching it live, right? So
that was beautiful. That was timeless, Clinton. Okay, Sarah, what does all times happen? All at onceness is another way. What does that mean to you?
I would say on one level, when a human is present, or when a person understands that there's really nothing new under the sun, the things that you've seen, chances are your forefathers have experienced a version of that. I think it's just about the human experience. I have said this before. I do believe that, not that I know anything about science or physics very well, but from what I understand, past, present, and future together, that is the mind of God. So that's kind of like, whatever that means. That could be anything. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. So sorry about that.
That was good. No, I like you say, I'm going to say something. I don't know what it means. That is total wakey. That's like,
it's just going to come out. I don't get it yet.
Right. That's the thing. It's like,
I'm ahead of my time.
Yeah. We think you're ahead of your time. It's like, you mean I have to think before I speak?
I try. It doesn't work.
No,
not necessary.
I think everybody. Okay, Duncan, all at onceness. What is that? How does that make you feel? Or talk about that a little?
Well, we could spend many hours just on this one subject. I've learned, if any of us learned anything today, had any revelation at all, which I think is very possible, it has changed the meaning of our past. And it also has changed our vision of our future. And conversely, whatever vision of the future we have right now changes right now. Sarah kind of alluded to this when she said, don't bring up Afghanistan.
Not
Right,
listen
it would
to me, sorry.
meaning of now. Okay, and this happens all the time. So that's just one level of answering that question. And I'm sure you know that there are unlimited levels. I mean, history is constantly being revised. If you saw that, what was that recent? Oh, about the effect of racism. The Haitian filmmaker. Oh, exterminate all the brutes.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, this whole critical race theory thing, the reason why the right wing is freaking out about it is because their vision of the past is being threatened, even though it's a total bullshit vision. And even if it's legit history, you know, they have a thing, there's a big controversy in Texas. A new book came out on the Alamo. And I hate to say it, it's an interesting book, but it's a really not, the parts I saw, it's not a very good book. But it basically says that, you know, the heroes of the Alamo were, you know, crooks, womanizers who were spreading syphilis around, shyster lawyers, and that the battle did not happen the way it's said, that that's really a John Wayne mock-up that has been being taught in Texas schools. So this is a big deal. So anyway, I'll cut it short. We have 3 segments of time that we do, the past, the present, and the future, and they're constantly modifying each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's just
great.
one level.
Yeah. Duncan, that's a great word. They're modifiers. I'm going to turn to Eric's book one more time and just read a short little thing. When writing Finnegan's Wake, Joyce often likened his work to that of 2 tunneling parties approaching each other from opposite sides of a mountain. The theme of one world burrowing towards another is also used several times in the Wake and seems an apt image for the changes announced by the 10 100 letter thunder words as well. The tunneling parties are a clue to Joyce's procedure. He tackled his problem from many angles simultaneously and kept at them until a solution presented itself. The mountain is the experience stored in language. Sometimes, as in the case of the thunders, the solution came late. So, you know, this whole thing of causality, effects preceding causes, you know, Duchamp saying there is no solution because there's no problem. So, you know, was Joyce really saying there was a problem? No, he was saying that the mountain is the experience stored in language, that, you know, this is like language as a storage tool. So, you know, I welcome like sort of closing comments. I thought, Duncan, you said that well, but let's in honor of today being 101 years ago, exactly today, August 15th, Joyce met T.S. Eliot, Wyndham Lewis. So I randomly picked page 101 for us to read a couple lines. So let's just take a little Finnegan's Wake reading club, and everybody turns to their page 101, and we'll start with Sarah, and then Duncan, and then Clinton, and then me, and then back to Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Dispersal women wondered, was she fast? Do tell us all about, as we want to hear all about. So tell us, tell.
That's all about her. the why and the whether she looked a lot like the Ussies, and whether he had his wind up like them's is shut. Notes.
And queries, tip bids and answers, the laugh and the shout, the ards and the downs. Now listed to one a neither, and list them down.
And smooth them out your leaves of rose. The war is over. Whim, 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 whim. Was it Unity Moore or Estella Swift or Verena Fay?
Or quarta quatum. Thomas Mark for York uncle. Hey guys, hold up medder your leg. Who but who for second of.
That was great, you guys. I was like, that again, I always say, it feels like you're tripping on acid and you're peaking. But
I just excluded the word time. I forgot that.
Say it again.
I just left out the word time because time doesn't exist. I don't know.
Oh, good.
Okay.
For
Boom.
time of asking.
Boom.
Yeah, for second of asking. So anybody want to say how any of those words make you feel that we just read?
Well, I was expecting you to say wimwam, even though I saw that the word said wim wim. But
I love it. You know, Clinton, we read the Wake with people who are very intelligent and they can read every syllable perfect. And they even make mistakes, which kills me because I make a mistake about every fourth word or every fourth syllable. But they will say things like wimwam when it says wim wim,
Mhm.
you know.
sure.
It's like really hard to read every syllable like grammatically. Like it can be pronounced differently, but grammatically what the word is. Duncan, or Sarah, any of these words make you feel any way?
I like the laugh and the shout together. I think that's kind of neat.
Well, you know what Roland McHugh says? That's the long and the short of it. So that's a cliche, the long and the short. What does that mean? The long and the short of it. What does that cliche mean?
Like that's the
a
short.
capsule.
Yeah, that's the summary, or that's the the short version.
So the laugh and the
Or I
shout.
guess that's the, or I guess like you say it at the end of having accounted a story, and then I guess when you say that's the long and the short of it, you're saying like, well, that's everything, and that was the shortest you could get it, or something like this, right?
Right.
Like,
But the laugh and the shout means, you know, that's heavy, turning long into laugh and shout into, short into shout. That's like, again, Clinton, it was your question. How long did he sit there and try to figure out that? Well, I'm going to mock the long and the short of it by saying the laugh and the shout of it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that's where the ocean waves thing comes in. I think that the actual rhythm of it predominated in the various parts, and the meanings of things was actually secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Sarah, it's great having you here because they say at the end of line 2, the Tellus is a reference to the Greek earth goddess.
Who's that?
Like, well, that's what Roland McHugh says, that Tellus is the Greek earth goddess, and you're saying Talus, or Talus. You're mixing up the two things, like goddess, tell us all about it, and then blending that word all about her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then you continue the feminine because they say that the words "was she fast" is referring to the river. Was the river fast? Then Lottie like, Alotty like, Was she ladylike?
All about her makes my first thought was alabaster, and I know there's
Alabaster.
like statues and stuff carved out of alabaster.
Yeah.
That's good. Alabaster. Duncan, what'd you say?
Well, I think it's. Let me just read it in a certain way. As we want to hear all about. So tell us all about her, the why and the whether she looked a lot like hussies and whether he had his wind up like themselves each shut. This is somewhere between a children's rhyme and a Lewis Carroll sort of bit of whimsy.
Whimsy. And then you get whimsy goes right along with windop. They suggest it's window.
Right. Had his wind up like themsy shut.
Like
And then
themsy is mimsy shut. And one more is the arts. Yeah, there you go. And the ards and the downs are the ups and the downs.
Mhm.
Well, anyways, that was really fun, people. If anybody has any closing comments, please spout them off, because I was really happy with this McLuhan mashup. Thank you so much.
Great talk.
Yeah. Have a good evening, everyone.
I'm gonna hold on one second. I'm gonna close out with a couple lines. Sarah, we're gonna reword your the cliche you said. There's nothing old under the sun. Instead of there's nothing new under the sun, we switch it. There's nothing old under the sun. Because communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. We can have epiphanies in everydayness. So I'm going to read from the closing pages of the wake just a couple lines. I done me best when I was let, thinking always, if I go, all goes. 100 cares, a tiffany of troubles, and is there one who understands me? One in 1,000 of years of the nights? The keys too, given, away, alone, a last, a loved, along the. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
River Run. Good night, everyone.
River.